Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about how I make a target list. And to start with, go to the Minor Planet Center's website and come down to the NEO confirmation page. This is the place where new objects are announced. And the first thing I do is sort them by magnitude. And then I look at the declinations, the number of observations, and how long it's been since they've been seen. So for this first object, declination is within my reach. Number of observations is 124, and it hasn't been seen in 0.36 days. So that's certainly one I can try for. This next object, 19.2 magnitude, the declination is good. 4 observations, hasn't been seen in 2.5 days. That is probably lost, so I'm not going to try for that one. Next object, declination is good. 4 observations, it's been 0.25 days. I can try for that one. Next object, declination is good. 4 observations, hasn't been seen in 6.3 days. That's probably lost. Next object, declination is okay. It's getting kind of faint from my system. 3 observations, hasn't been seen in 0.25 days. I can try for that one. Next object, minus 18. That's getting pretty low in my sky. 3 observations, hasn't been seen in almost 0.3 days. I can try for that one. That one would be difficult. Next object, 68 observations, hasn't been seen in 0.37 days. So that's one I can probably try for. And the rest of these are too faint. So here's my list of objects that I want to try for. And now I want to create a text file of just the names of these objects. So I click on Get Ephemerids, and basically I'm going to create a text file with just the names of these objects in there. So highlight, copy, paste, highlight, copy, paste, copy, paste. And that's it. Okay, now I'm going to put the date here at the top, and I'm going to save this text file. That's just the name that I use. You can choose whatever name you want. And this is the list of objects that I want to try and observe. So now I want to create a file with the orbital elements of these objects. Since these are new objects, the only place to find the orbital elements for these objects is from this page. So I'm going to start another text file, and I'm going to click on Orbits for this object and highlight that, right click. I'm going to paste that in here. So there's the orbital elements for this first object. Second object, you can see there are multiple orbits for this, possible orbits. This first one is the nominal orbit, the best fitting one. So I'm going to use that one. Next object, similar situation, numerous variant orbits. I'm going to select this first one here, which is the nominal orbit. And let's see what we have here. Again, numerous orbits. This is fairly typical for new objects with only a few positions, 3 or 4 or 5. You get a nominal orbit, and then you get many, many variant orbits, sometimes hundreds, even thousands of them. But we're just going to concern ourselves with the first one, the nominal orbit. Finally, this one. Okay, this one has been observed. You see it has 68 observations over 2 days. So this one just has one orbit. Okay, so here's this text file of the orbital elements for those new objects. This format has to be modified slightly for Carte du Ciel be able to use it. So here's what you have to do. Copy the name, and then come to the end of that line and add, I believe, 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're now at column 167, and paste that name. So I've added 6 spaces at the end of this, and then at column 167, I've pasted the name of the object. That's all you have to do. So I'll come back and do that for this next one. I'm going to use some keyboard shortcuts. Control C to copy it. Go to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Control V to paste. Control C to copy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Control V to paste. Control C. That's it. These are now in a format that Carte du Ciel can load in. So let me save this. I'm going to save this as 4.1.17, and I'm going to add ELM for elements. Again, that's just my own personal naming scheme. So now I have these 2 text files. One of them has just the names of the objects. I've added this date up here just as a header, and then I've added the orbital elements in this text file. So that's how I process the objects from the NEO confirmation page. You need to get the orbital elements into a format that Carte du Ciel can recognize, and then you load this plain text file into its target list. Now, if you want to process other asteroids and comets, you can do that. What I do is go back here to the main page, come down to NEO Services, and go to the Observation Planning Aid. This lists, this is a form that you can fill out to get a listing of asteroids that have been seen and have orbits that are fairly well known, perhaps still in need of some refinement. So you basically fill out this form, planned observation date, UT, it's actually going to be the 2nd in this case. I fill in the declination range of about -30 to +90, RA 0 to 360. I limit this to about 19.5 magnitude. And the rest of these, you might have to tweak the motion range. I just put that in there to get all of them, especially the ones that come close to the Earth, can move pretty quickly. And I believe I've set this at an uncertainty minimum of ½ an arc second. And I have this, this is going to be sorted by uncertainty in a decreasing order. So I'm going to see the ones with the most uncertainty at the top of the list. Here's my observatory code. Produce the object list. So here's a list of all these objects. And now I basically click on Get Ephemeris, and I look for this, useful for orbit improvement. Okay, so this object, observations are desired. And I check a couple of things. I check the magnitude. That's certainly something I can get. I also check the distance from the moon. Now, in this case, the moon is only about 30% full, so it's not a big deal. But checking here can be very helpful if you're getting, more than a first quarter moon or something close to a full moon. You don't want these objects to be too close to the moon. So here, you can see it's plenty far away, and the moon is not really even going to be an issue. So again, I copy and paste this name into the target list file. And I just go down the list here. Useful for orbit improvement, okay. Bright enough for me to get, not too close to the moon. So we'll try for this one. Next one, bright enough for me to get, not too close to the moon, useful for orbit improvement, so we'll try for this one. Keep going down the list. I think you get the idea. Look for this, useful for orbit improvement, copy and paste the name into the text file. Useful for orbit improvement, copy and paste the name into the text file. Here's one where it doesn't say anything about useful for orbit improvement, so we'll skip that. Here's another one, certainly bright enough. Here's another one, 19.5, that's getting pretty faint. Not too close to the moon, so we'll try for this one. Here's one that says not necessary for orbital improvement, so we'll skip this one. Useful for orbit improvement, bright enough, so you get the idea. You just go through this list one at a time. Not necessary, skip it. Useful, check the magnitude, check the distance from the moon, looks good, we'll try that one. Here's another useful, bright enough. So you go through this list, and when you're done, you may have 15 or 20 objects, potential targets. It depends on how faint you can go. It depends on the phase of the moon. Depends on really what you want to try for. We'll save this. Now the orbital elements for these objects, the ones that have preliminary designations or the ones that have numbers, you don't need to worry about those. Those are going to automatically be downloaded into Carte du Ciel. It's just the orbital elements for these new objects. You have to manually load those in to Carte du Ciel. Those don't get downloaded There's no way to do that. You have to manually load those in. That's the reason for creating this file. Now, one last thing, if you want to do some comets, come back here to the main page, and what I do, I go down to Other Observer Services and Observing Target List. Okay, so here's where you can plug in your latitude. Here it's 39.1 about, longitude minus 84.3 roughly. You don't have to be too accurate there. The observing time, we'll just call it astronomical twilight tonight, and we'll tell it we want all 8 hours so we can catch objects in the evening and the morning. Maximum number of objects, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll try 20. Leave the rest of those at defaults, and then select comets. And submit. So now let's go to the list of comets that meet those criteria. Takes a minute. Takes more than a minute. Okay. Here's the list of comets, and you can sort them by clicking on one of these columns, sort them by magnitude. And here's the list of comets. And what I look for here is, of course, how bright are they? How far away from the moon is it? And also, I look at these altitudes. At the beginning of my observing time, which is the start of astronomical twilight, this thing is up 40 degrees. It reaches a maximum altitude of 64 degrees, and here's the UT time of that. And then at the end of my observing time, it has an altitude of 54 degrees. So this is certainly something I could try for. So you need to copy and paste this name into your target list file. And actually, it just needs the 41p. This next object is certainly bright enough, and it's certainly high enough. Later on in the evening here, it's up 81 degrees at a maximum altitude. So rather than copy and paste, I'm just going to type these in here. And that's all you need for Comet Johnson. This next comet is an oddball. It hasn't been recovered yet, so it's showing up in the list as being, 13th magnitude, but it hasn't been recovered yet. Comet Clark. You can see it doesn't get up very high. It's down pretty low in the sky, but it's possible to get it, so I'll add it to the list. 71p. Comet Gun, getting kind of faint, pretty low declination, and it never really gets up very high in the sky, so I'm probably not going to try for that one, just because it doesn't get up very high in the sky. Same for this comet. I know this is setting right at sunset. It's low in the western sky. The reason I know that is because it's at an altitude of 20.8 degrees right at the start of my observing period, and the maximum altitude also is at the start of my observing period. So in the end of my observing period is the start of my observing period. So this is saying you catch this right at the start at 21 degrees in the western sky, or you don't get it at all. 43P, that's certainly one. I believe it's up high enough. Yeah, well, actually, no. That's down pretty low. I'm not going to try for that one. Now you start getting to pretty faint comets. A word of caution about these magnitudes. These magnitudes are not necessarily the visual magnitude. That's a whole other subject as to how these magnitudes reflect its actual brightness in the sky. So these are typically low, sometimes very low. So what you think might be too faint to observe is actually plenty bright. So I just caution you about that, and to maybe double check another source for the visual magnitudes of these comets. But for now, this kind of gives you an idea of how to create a target list of new objects, somewhat well-observed objects but in need of orbital refinement, and also some comets. So we'll save that text file. We've talked about selection criteria, and we talked about creating this element file for the new objects. All the other elements for these objects are going to be available when you download them into Cart2CL. So I think we'll stop there for this target selection video. Thank you very much for watching.